Hi, folks. This is Inside the Leader's Mind, where what's in the way becomes the way. I'm David Susan. I want to welcome you to today's session. Our guest today, Dusty Gulleson. So excited to have you. I'm going to let Dusty, I keep saying Gusty, I'm going to let Dusty introduce himself, and then we're going to jump in. Dusty, go for it.
David, don't worry about messing up my name. I grew up with this name through middle school, so it steeled my emotions after being called everything from Dusty, Gusty, Busty, you name it. It was crazy.
It happens. It
It
happens.
happens, but hey, good thing about having a name like that is it creates resilience and it creates a backbone and allows you to work through difficulties. That's probably my initial leadership experience was having to deal with middle school and high school folks teasing me with that name. But I grew up overseas in Indonesia. I was born and raised. My parents were missionaries there, so 0 to 18 in Southeast Asia. And when I came to the States, I was ready to roll because I was excited about being back in the States and took a year off. Thought a third world culture kid should take a bit off. But after a few years of just wandering around and did all kinds of crazy jobs from health insurance sales, did a couple years at college and dropped out, did some more sales and other things. And then went to Europe, met my wife, and came back and we got married. And after one stint at a job as a operations guy, I quit and started my company. So I've been doing this ever since 1999, 27
Oh,
years.
oh my gosh. Well, tell us a little bit about what you do now.
So I'm privileged to work with a great team because it is not one person, it is a whole team that makes things happen. I have the privilege of working with about 80 employees, and I have a great C-suite. And what we do is we work with higher ed, nonprofits, associations, you name it. There's not really one vertical that we have to pin ourselves to because we have 5 divisions in our company. We're a vertically integrated technology company. We do infrastructure and managed services on one side. We do digital design, software development, enterprise websites, integrations. On the other side, we have a whole digital marketing team that does everything from the tactics of SEO to strategy and content design. And then we have staff augmentation. And incidentally, we have 2 SaaS products that we developed that serves higher ed and corporate philanthropy as well for non-standardized workflow-driven grants, applications, scholarships. So we've touched it all. But one of the things people come to us for is an expertise that crosses not just the infrastructure side, but also the web, the digital side, and we can actually converge and be a really strategic partner to our clients.
That is that is so cool. I had worked in that those arenas that you did, very similar infrastructure, but also higher ed, K-12, nonprofit. I've been in that world. The question I have is, how the heck did you get into doing?
You know, um, I had a friend, a good Jewish friend of mine. He says, "You know what the Jewish curse is? I wish upon you a company with many employees." And I laughed at him, but uh, you know, I did a good job with on a project with a small association, and then that led to another one, and that led to another one. Um, and what I spent a lot of my time was looking for opportunities, and I don't think that curse is true because as I grew, I added great people, and as we added great people, um, we were able to expand into other divisions and other verticals to serve people. So we started off being building CMSs back in the day, 1999, 2000. The big grill on the block was a Vignette,
Yep.
and a lot of those big folks out there charging $1 million licenses. And I thought that was crazy. And these nonprofits and associations had tons of great content and couldn't deliver. So we built our own CMS back 1999 in a classic ASP at the time. And I hired my first employee, which was a childhood friend from Indonesia. We used H1B at the time, and he came over and he would code, and I'd sleep on the floor. And then he'd wake me up, and I would test, and he'd sleep on the floor. And we did that back and forth for about a year. And as we started getting great customers that loved their CMS, that were like, hey, we can actually enter into this market and manage all our content without paying Vignette and the others out there that are costing an arm and a leg. We grew pretty rapidly, and we hired another H-1B, and then unfortunately 9/11 happened and cut that whole thing off. And then clients would come to us and say, hey, you do this really well. Can you do this other thing that we need? And that's when we started our MSSP, our Managed Security Service Provider, where we manage networks and help desk. And that grew quite rapidly. And oh, by the way, this all started in the DC metro area where we started this. And then we grew from that. We had a client that wanted to do scholarships for overseas studies programs. And we created basically a SaaS product for them. And that grew into our Orchestrate product that is being used by Stanford University, McGraw-Hill, Google for their scholarship system. Um, you name it. We're Rutgers. A lot of higher ed use it. So it's been a real blessing. And it grew out of that as well as we created a accessibility management software. A lot of these higher ed organizations don't have tools to manage their federally mandated requirement to provide accommodations for students in higher ed. There's a lot of audiences involved: the professor, the school, the individual. So our software helps manage that whole process very affordably. And then what's sprung out of that is, we had some friends in Indonesia, and one of my fintech clients said, hey, could you hire a bookkeeper for me offshore? And I said, let me see. And so we did. And now we have about 80 bookkeepers offshore, providing back office support for a lot of fintech accounting firms in a super secure environment. And it's very affordable. And what's great about that business is that we give a lot of great jobs to folks that, especially women that wouldn't have a professional opportunity in Southeast Asia. They now have a great opportunity to work for a good company that treats them well and pays them well. So it's a real social benefit to my fellow Indonesians where I grew up. So
That
it's quite a blessing.
that is so cool. Do you? So what's going through my mind is, does the word no ever come in? Meaning, you have these clients over the years, and it's like, we need this. It's almost like you always say yes, and then you find a way to do it. Is that kind of your MO, the way you are wired? Or is it, I want to grow, get bigger, bigger, bigger? Or what is it that drives and motivates you to take on these projects that have allowed you to grow to where you are today?
It's funny, if one of my long-term team members, Mike, was here, he'd be like, it's the story of his life. He's always constantly trying to do it. I think what drives me is solving problems at the end of the day. I enjoy when someone presents a problem, how do they solve it? I tinker about it and I think about it, and we end up solving it. There are things we say no to for sure. Certain types of verticals that are very unique that would drive us off. And in retrospect, creating a SaaS product when you have a development shop is very hard to do when you're trying to develop stuff for clients and then trying to develop stuff for your own product base. Um, in retrospect, I've learned that hard lesson. It's good to have those teams separate. But I do like solving problems. So that's what does drive me. And our C-suite is a team of problem solvers. They love challenges. Every month, I think that's what drives us. It gives us purpose. If you're just doing the same thing over and over again, it's like being on a factory floor on an assembly line. This gives a variety, gives challenge. And when you solve a problem for a client that's unique, they're incredibly great partners after that. And we have a great relationship. And I would say
That's
that's what keeps our team together too. I think our average employee has been here for 14 years, which is a great testament to the environment, the challenges it provides. And I think as humans, we want to be challenged.
well. I think that I want to transition into that because I mean, I know people want to be challenged, but
Hmm.
a lot of times they're challenged and they're not staying there 10 or 15 years. So I love the people side of leadership because I think
Hmm.
it's as I say, if everyone was 10% better, if everyone gave 10% more in any
Hmm.
organization,
Hmm.
you look at what that potential impact would be. So the people side of leadership, and yeah, you have the strategic side of, do I take this project? Do I go into this market? And do I do an
Hmm.
acquisition? Okay, so there's always that side. But
Mhm.
on the people side, which is a huge chunk of time and potentially headache and right our spending, our budget. What do you think it is about you and your style of leadership that has enabled these people to want to stay with you 10 or 15 years? It's not because it's not just the challenge, because so many companies have
Yeah,
challenges.
yeah, absolutely. I would say, and I'm not unique to this, but I do not micromanage. I don't like it. And there's a saying in the company: if I want to have meetings with you a lot, it's not a good sign because I'm trying to figure out what the problem is or what's going on. And the other side of the coin of that that's bad is I tend to, if nothing's wrong, I go off and do something else to solve another problem, right? And people feel isolated. So there's a balance there between not micromanaging and also engaging. I think um, I really give people an objective. This is where we're going. How do you want to get there? And so it empowers people to problem solve on their own instead of dictating that problem to them. And otherwise, you just become a rote worker, right? You get a, here's where I need you to go. This is how you're going to do it. This is what I want you to do. And people are like, they don't get to use that part of their talents where it needs to be exercised about problem solving and creating a solution. So I really try to allow people to solve the problems on their own. Yeah, come to me if you need some help. Come to me if you need some direction. But usually, what I try to do is when someone says, "Hey, I have this problem," and I would respond, "Oh, that's a good problem. How would you like to solve that?" And had that conversation, let them walk through the problem solving instead of me dictating it. I learned this from marriage. My wife never likes me to fix a problem. She wants me to just listen. And so a lot of good leadership is just good listening and encouraging someone through questions and through dialogue how to get from point A to point B and whatever they're working on.
So, other than your wife, where did you learn your leadership?
I learned it through a lot of mistakes. I think failure is the best teacher. I know that's a cliche, but it's absolutely true. I used to have a saying, in our company, don't speak to me. Or if you're going to talk to me in bullet points. I don't want the long narrative. I don't want the long story. I don't want all of that stuff. And people would joke around and go, yeah, if we had a shirt with your quote on it, it'd be speak to me in bullet points. And I learned that is the wrong way to lead
Mm.
uh, because the bullet points don't talk about where the real expectations are, where the real needs are. The story is what really defines the actual outcome. Bullet points tend to strip things down. It's kind of like specifications, you know. You don't learn about the benefits; you just learn about the specs. And there used to be a saying that I heard that benefits sell and specs tell. You know, and what you're really doing when you're trying to solve a problem, you're selling a solution, and you want people to talk, and you just learn to listen more. And I think I regret being so impulsive. It's what makes me good at what I do, but the counterbalance is you need to take the time. And at the end of the day, an organization's people, processes, and platforms for me, and people are the most important ingredient in that. Those three P's for me. And it takes time. You just this whole hockey stick mentality and business, and it's just it's great, but you're not gonna create something that's lasting, and you're not gonna benefit your team. People want to be able to think through their problems, and it just sometimes it takes longer for some folks, sometimes shorter. But the most important thing as a leader is to listen.
Sounds like you've had some great growth along the way. I mean, that's remarkable. And maybe you've already said this, implied this in what you said. As you look at yourself, is that your superpower, or what would you say your leadership superpower is?
I think it's problem solving, definitely. Um, I I don't like to actually implement. I like to strategize. I'm really good at doing that. But I think what has become my superpower is the ability to take stock more and to slow down. And I think that's helped us be very successful this year. We've had an incredibly successful year. And it's also helped me look at opportunities for us to grow better. We've acquired 5 companies over the year, and we're looking at another acquisition right now. And my superpower is to see strategically what problem are we trying to solve in the future? How can it help our clients? Like if we're going to get this funded, how will this help our clients as a partner thrive more, do more? And then going back to the team and just listening, going, what do you think about this? And, there's a saying in in our leadership suite is I'm a benevolent dictator. I want your opinion, not your vote. And so we try to have a collaborative environment because I own the company. It's 100% mine, so it's 100% my responsibility. But I always tell them I'm never going to veto things unless it's absolutely crisis critical. I want us all to be there. And I think it's really important to run that collaborative environment because if you don't, people don't have buy-in. And a leadership team that doesn't have buy-in or voice in the decision, they're going to burn out and leave. They 100% will. And I think that's with the whole team as a whole. You don't allow people to be part of the solution. They're gonna eventually leave because there's nothing challenging, no purpose though. I know it's a long-winded thing. What was my superpower? I mean, part of my team is like sales, 100%. I love sales. I enjoy it. But I look at sales as not trying to get someone to buy something. I look at sales as a problem-solving event together with the client. What are you trying to do? Where are we going? And that's taken a long time to get to the point where I am very good at being a collaborator and a advocate for our clients to solve problems.
Yeah. When you look at your own business, you mentioned growth, right? And you've
Mhm.
done acquisitions, and you've got another one on the horizon here. Do you as a leader, are you looking at your business and saying, I want to grow X%? Do you look at it and say, I want to go 2X? Or do you basically say, you know what? We're just going to keep going. And if we grow, we grow, long as we're not losing money. Like, what is your thought process on that, on growth?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. Because a lot of folks put targets, and I feel like targets are they're arbitrary to a certain degree. You can put a target, I want to grow 1,000%, I want to grow 100%. You can have a realistic target. I think targets for the target's sake are useless. And one way, what I look at when we look at acquirers, will this fit our culture? Will this help improve what we're serving our clients? Yes, we want to grow. We always want to grow. And I find it enjoyable bringing in another company that really will augment what we do, enhance what we do, because our long-term goal is to be a very integrated solution for a client that can come to us on all things technology, be it from the infrastructure to AI to digital to marketing, because we see a lot of the smaller companies really needing a vendor that sees them holistically. And there's a lot of convergence happening in infrastructure and software, especially in the DevOps and cloud space, where you need a partner that understands cloud, and you also need a client that understands how to deliver their software through the cloud and all the integrations that go with it. So the decision process I look at when I look at an opportunity is, yes, will it make us stronger as a company? Do they have great folks there that will make us a better team? Have the folks been there a long time? Do they love what they do? And will this be a benefit to our clients as a whole? Will our current clients really benefit from the value of this integration?
And so is the growth in your experience, been almost more organic than forced?
Um, you know, we talk about quality of earnings, and my growth has, or the growth in our sales have been about, yes, it's organic. We have a lot of clients that very rarely a client leaves us. It's either through a death of a thousand cuts because something was missed somewhere, and that's rare, or it's because they got acquired, and we're the junior vendor in the relationship. Those are the two places we really lose a good partner in the long term. And we've had clients with us for 15, 18 years now, and just we've grown with them as they've grown. Um, and we do have outbound sales. We do a lot of marketing, and so we try to do that as well. But a lot of it's organic, a lot of referrals. I mean, I would say in the last 4 months, we've had 5 large enterprise clients just come to us because they talked to someone else and they said, "Oh, these guys solved that problem." So they
Yeah.
call us, and then we solve that problem for them. And it's kind of goes on for that. And so I always have a tough time because marketing is so hard to do attribution for, right? Our poor CMO is like, I don't know how to do attribution for all the work we're doing. And really, at the end of the day, I tell every employee, everyone's involved in sales by doing a good job. And so when we get another client, it's not one person sold that. It's all of us because the reputation, the history, the referrals, all that came from everybody partaking in it.
A great attitude to look at holistically. And I, I think there's a lot of companies that don't see it this way. You look at customer experience portion, and you get sales selling it, and then customer experience is not there,
Yep.
and it's hard to retain. Or you have great customer experience but horrible sales side, right? So it's. I love hearing that about the balance. As you look at other leaders that you admire,
Mhm.
what is it that some of them are doing, especially on the people side of
Mm.
leadership, that you aspire to be even better?
You know, I, there's a great guy I know locally that he sold his business recently as a fuel supply company up in the Pacific Northwest. And the thing I admire most about him that I try to aspire to be is the less the sense of not making the urgent determine how you behave. And what I mean by that is when there might be something as a perceived crisis or a real crisis or something that's really, you know, got to get it done right now. He steps back from that. Doesn't mean that he doesn't address it, but he steps back from it. And again, it goes back to that listening, trying to understand the real situation. What's the real issue behind the urgency or the crisis? And I think there's a lack of calmness. A lot of stuff is just so. I'm speaking for myself. Very impulsive in responding to things, but I see that in other organizations where CEO goes off the cuff, and I think that leads to that urgency and that stress can translate into anger. That can really anger is a terrible, terrible cancer in an organization. When you lose it or you get frustrated, and I always say to my leadership, there is no bad employee, there's bad leaders. Because I don't think, yes, I understand there are bad employees, but it's a very few and far between. Usually when someone's not performing well in your organization, it's because you're not giving them the oxygen to it. You're angry, you're frustrated, or something, and you're not listening. And so I would say from this one gentleman, I've learned calmness and listening. I'm not allowing, as soon as I start to feel frustrated, I step back and go, nope, it's not the right time to respond. Because you don't, there's nothing so urgent that allows you to blow up at someone. So from an impulse point, and I've learned this just in being a parent, you know, it's hard dealing with teenagers that don't want to get out of bed in the morning. And, I have one of them that it's a struggle, but I've learned through, both hard and good ways that just a calmness and you can actually detect the temperature in a room, both in work and at home by how you project yourself. So you can calm a client pretty well if you project calmness.
Oh, it's fascinating because I'm also a parent, and there is a parallel
Hmm.
between parenting and leadership. And people that don't, they're not there, they wouldn't get it, but
Yep.
there is. And it's
100%.
and what's amazing is, and I'd love your opinion on this, sometimes we know what to do, but we don't do it. Does that ever occur in your life?
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. The reason why I don't do what I want to do is I'm selfish. Because I'm looking for my outcome. And parenting, it's interesting. I like that you made the parenting and leadership the same because when your child doesn't perform to what you expect, that's the problem. It's your expectations. You're not worried about them, right? And so it's the same thing with a company. When somebody in your organization doesn't perform to what you expect, well, one, they probably don't know it, but you're creating a burden on them. You're shaming them. And I think shame is probably one of the worst things you can do to anybody, even greater than anger. If you shame someone, you are destroying them as a person. And when, I used to say to my son, hey, you get up. I don't want do you want to be like that? Do you not want to be responsible? And, that was a horrible thing to ever say to my son. Instead of saying, hey, I know you're struggling right now. How can I help you? Is there something you're thinking about? And teenagers have a million things going on in their lives more than just at a job, right? And so I found the same dynamic at work where someone just, screws up in a way that was royal. And I had one example that I just came to mind because it made me laugh. I had a data center manager come to me once with his resignation. This was a few years back. And I said, what is this? It's like, well, I screwed up on this major client and they left us. It was a big blow up back in the day. And I said, well, I don't want your resignation. It's like, nah. I'm like, listen, I don't know if we equipped you well enough for that. Or, and then we went on and I said, have you learned anything? He's like, oh, I've learned a ton. I will never happen again. I said, that was, it was only a $15,000 or $20,000 event. I said, you just had a $20,000 training event. Why would we get rid of you? You're part of our team. We all make mistakes. It's okay. And now you've learned something valuable. And that person's been with us now 18 years.
Wow.
So I think the same thing in parenting. When your child does something, check your expectations and make sure that your expectations are not, they're probably not reasonable. I'm a 51-year-old man. I have a 16-year-old son. Not the same experience world, right? And I don't know what he's going through. And you got to stop and listen and listen and listen. And whatever you do, don't get angry or frustrated, and definitely don't shame somebody. That's a definite. I think there's a psychologist down in I forget the book I was reading. He said that they did a study that people would rather die than being shamed. That shame is
Yeah.
worse than death, and it's true.
I absolutely love your insight on that because I think it's very easy in leadership to find a scapegoat and
Hmm.
not look in the mirror and point at yourself and say, hey, wait a minute, I could have done better.
Yeah.
And here's what I always believe, and I believe this about kids, but I believe about employees. They're not doing it on purpose. They're not
Yeah.
messing up on I mean, rarely, right? Maybe there's
Yeah.
ones,
Sure.
but the reality is an accident is an accident. And if they would
Yeah.
have known better, they would have done better. And what we oftentimes do is the shame. And we say, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have. Well, of course, if I would have known that, I wouldn't have done that. Well, why'd you say that? Why did you do that? Which I hate that question.
Yeah.
Why? Well, because I did. Like I screwed up because I screwed up. You watch sports. Why did you throw an interception? Well, because I wanted to. Of course not.
Of
We're
course not.
so this is that humanness. This is that human behavior.
Yep.
It's just who we are. And there is no I talk about this in my keynotes. I said, they're people, they're not robots.
Yep.
We can't just flip a switch and people are going to act and behave the way we expect them to. They're just human. And I love that you shared that and that even you tied it to, shared about family, because I think our listeners, people need to hear this
Hmm.
uh, and have that compassion and the empathy, but drop the ego and drop the selfishness, which is really what you said.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. It's really hard. So thank you for sharing that. I love that.
Yeah. Well,
So
always growing, always learning. That's for sure.
uh, I love that. So I want to wrap with a couple quick thoughts here. What would be, and maybe you already said it, what would be your biggest advice for other leaders? People that are already in a leadership role that would make them, in your opinion, make them even better at what they do.
I think, talk about shame. Don't shame yourself. You're going to make mistakes. Let's start there. You will make mistakes. And that is just going to happen. It's the fact of life. You don't know everything, and you haven't experienced everything. I would say when you do make that mistake, be humble, own it.
Mm,
Tell people. People have more respect for humility than they do for their confidence.
mm,
I feel at the end of the day, and when you come to your team and go, you know what, I let you down. I didn't do this well. This is what I'm gonna do to fix it, and I could use any help or any insight. People respect the humility of a leader who is learning and growing because it makes them feel safe. And having a place where employees feel safe, knowing that they will mess up. We all do. It's part of life. They're going to be better learners. They're going to be willing to listen more. And I think having that coupled with, the things that we say don't do to an employee, on a coworker, don't do to yourself.
yeah.
Just apply the same rules.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Love it. And last question. What's the question you wish people would ask you, but they don't know to ask you? Could be about anything. Could be about leadership. Could be about you personally. Could be about just life. What's a question you wish people would ask you, but they don't? They don't know to ask you, but you wish they would.
I think leaders never get asked. And, this is why I'm part of some like mastermind groups and stuff. Is like, how do you how do you manage to deal with the loneliness at the top? It's a very lonely position, being a CEO and owner of a company, because there's no peers in your coworkers per se. You a lot of my VPs and C-suite will say, don't ask that question of someone because they're not going to answer it the way that you really want them to answer it. Because no one talks to me like they would talk to someone else, because there's expectations that they have and fear or whatever they might have. And I'm just like, he told me this. And my VP was like, that's not the whole story, right? Or because sometimes they're new and they don't know what to say. And I think it's hard to have someone that's honest with you. Uh, I have a great guy on my team, Mike, who is kind of a conscience of me, and because he's been with the company for so long. And when you're not sure about what to do, it's great to find that one person when you're alone trying to figure out a decision and direction, to have someone that is willing to be the most honest person with you and go, no, that's not great. My dad always said, surround yourself with great people, but always have one that disagrees with you. And so the question I would say is, how do you handle the loneliness and just the burden of decision making when it is actually critical? There's people's mortgages on the line. There's people's family vacations on the line. I think about that a lot. I support 80 mortgages, right? I don't pay people, but their lives, their futures, their hopes, their purposes, that all rests on it. I'm responsible for my actions affect that. And it gets pretty tough to think that way. I don't know
And
if
so
that answers
what's
your question.
no, what so then what's the answer to that question, or is it in what you already
I think
said?
the answer to the question is find good mentors that have gone before you. Like this gentleman I was talking about that exited his company, and I meet with him once a month and just talk about anything, books we're reading, whatever. And I'll say, I'm dealing with this. And he'll be like, oh, and he'll give me some advice when I ask it. But it's great about it. He's a great listener. And I would say
Good.
the same thing. Do that to folks that are just starting out. Take the time. Go have a cigar with them, a beer or a drink or whatever, and just listen.
Hmm.
Because I think people being listened to is probably the greatest superpower someone can actually exercise to make someone feel whole again and safe.
Love it.
All right.
Love it. So if someone wants to learn more about your business, get in touch with you,
Sure.
what would you like to share?
Sure. They can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, of course. I'm on there. Um, eresources.com is the umbrella of all our different divisions. You have itondemand.com, you have Orchestrate Suites, orchestrateams.com. Viastudio.com is our digital side. Um, Incidentally, we're rebranding, David. We've been doing
Good.
all these acquisitions. So we have a brand new, brand beautiful setup and strategy coming out on January 23rd. So all those will redirect to that new brand site. But it's 2 years in the making. hundreds of $1,000s of worth of work, but we're repositioning ourselves to be that, boutique, vertically integrated company for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I'll make sure I put links to your LinkedIn profile, your main
Thank
company
you.
site, in the show notes for today. So,
Appreciate it.
Dusty, awesome guest. Thank you so much for being with me. I so appreciate you and for
Yeah.
taking the time.
Likewise, Dave. Thank you. I really appreciate Hey, by the way, I loved your speaker reel. There's some good stuff on there.
Oh, well,
Really
thank you. I
enjoyed that.
appreciate that. I
I don't know I
appreciate
can
that.
afford the quality of your stuff, but one day I'll give you a call.
Well, there you go. There you go. And folks, thank you so much for being here, listening to Inside the Leader's Mind. I'm David Susan, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
See you, everyone.